Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Being 6:15 p.m., I will call to order the Personnel Committee meeting for Tuesday, May 14th, 2024. Roll call is taken. All members are in attendance. Item number 2 on the agenda is approval of the minutes for the Personnel Committee meeting of April 9th, 2024.
If there are no corrections, I will make a motion to approve the minutes for the Personnel Committee meeting of April 9th of 2024.
Second.
We have a motion by Emmerich, second by Kripke. Any further discussion? All in favor by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3 is review and discussion of Village of Jackson job description updates. Ms. Keller?
I can tee us up. Before you are just a few job descriptions that we went ahead and placed 1 or 2 sentences by each department in the memo, basically highlighting what is changed. A lot of what you see within, give or take, 112 pages is a lot of just uniformly formatting these documents. Whatever is outside of formatting changes is enumerated. If the committee would like, I could suggest we go maybe department by department or just open it up generally for questions. But in summary, there were no additional roles created that weren't already funded through the budget process. And some of those roles have already been reviewed last, I want to say September or October, when we did more of a deep dive into the Parks and Recreation Department, some administrative roles. And so now you have the balance of what really wasn't looked at yet. And tonight we're seeking feedback before we finalize some remaining formatting tweaks to be made prior to the finalization of our handbook in July or August, because we would appreciate this serving as like a catalog of positions within the village attached to the handbook, so employees understand how our organization is structured, what those roles are, and who knows, maybe we someday have, like a summer intern cutting the grass that found out what the deputy treasurer did, and in 10 years have one of those. I've heard weirder things happen, so. On that note, I'll yield back to you guys.
I think to keep some structure and kind of break it down a little bit, just go department by department and see if anybody has any questions or anything. Sound good to the committee? All right. So first off would be the police department. Anybody have any questions on those items?
I just have one question for the people who are not in the union for the police department. Like with, we had a discussion for the lieutenants a couple months back for the comp time or whatever coming over, or sick time, whatever it was we discussed. Is any of that gonna be in here, like their raises and stuff too, how they get there, because they're out of the union, how they get their raises like the rest of the village, or should that be in here too, so they know what, like, or where is that type of stuff, just so.
It would be elsewhere in the manual, not necessarily in the job description, but
I just wondering how you, just thought out loud, so. Makes sense what I'm saying, know what I'm asking, I guess.
yeah, it would be covered elsewhere in the manual.
I guess it would go village-wide, I guess, for everybody who's not part of that.
Sure, and I do know that our policy document, it may have been in either chapters 2 or 3 that we looked at. And if I'm misspeaking, I will correct, because we do have one more chapter left, I think 6. Is that our policy handbook requires that there's annual performance reviews performed. And I know that at present, we tie our increases to performance evaluations. And so that may be what you're referencing? Okay.
Anything else for the police department? Moving on to, well, there's a lot of job descriptions for the police department. My goodness, what page are we going to here? There we go. Director of Building Inspection and Zoning. Any questions or comments on that position? If none, going on to the Assistant Building Inspector. You have anything? Oh, okay. You're right. You're right though. We'll get back on that track. Yeah. So anything on the building inspection department? All right. Next one is the fire department. Any questions or comments on the fire department job descriptions? I just had one thing, and it looks like it's in the fire chief job description, and it's also in the assistant chief position. Yeah, where it says in the license certification requirements, 10 years full-time firefighting experience. So do we think that limits us to, let's say somebody comes from is just a rock star at a volunteer department somewhere? Does that limit us to not being able to hire that person if they meet all the other qualifications or most of the other qualifications?
Is that for chief or assistant chief?
Both. Yeah, it's in both.
It's a pretty normal standard for any fire chief or assistant chief.
For a combination department?
Yeah, for any full-time position, it's very normal.
I don't think we should make that mandatory. I think we should maybe if you guys could look into it, if we could add some verbiage in there, preferred or suggested or something like that. So, I mean, even if, looking at it now, I mean, we probably have some battalion chiefs that if you were to retire or move on or whatever, we probably have some battalion chiefs that would make a good chief, but they have not been in a full-time firefighter role for 10 years.
I think all of them have, yes.
Not as a full-time firefighter, because that's what I'm reading it as.
Not
that
as full-time.
You have to be a full-time firefighter for 10 years to be able to.
Copy
As
it.
yeah.
I misunderstood you.
Yeah, yeah.
And some of that could be worth looking at the PFC bylaws that were adopted, not necessarily for, well, maybe also for assistant chief. I know the chief roles were what I particularly looked at last year's adoption because of those processes. I would step in at certain points in time for replacement if needed. But maybe we can revisit that, see what those
I
include.
do know, like, my job description when I was applying required that many years.
Sure.
So mine hasn't changed at all, so. But I think that was something the Police and Fire Commission came up with when they were in the process of hiring.
Okay. To be revisited then.
Yeah.
Yep.
And would that maybe go along with the assistant chief's position not being required to be paramedic?
That's one thing we probably should put preferred in there,
Yeah.
because you don't want to limit someone because of that. It's obviously preferred, and that helps the department out in the long run, but not necessary. Well, I was not required to have paramedic.
But we weren't a paramedic service at that point.
No.
So. Anything else on the fire department? That's another one with a lot of them. Parks and Recreation. Anything on the Parks and Recreation job descriptions? Next would be Public Works. to include utilities.
So it's just one change for Director of Public Works. I didn't have for department, it needs Public Works, comma, Jackson Sewer and Water Utilities. We'll make that change.
Anything on Public Works or the utilities? With that, that brings us to the end of the job descriptions. The one thing, I'm backtracking here now. The one thing I did notice, like on the chain of command for the utility clerk. So the utility clerk reports to the Director of Public Works.
Yes.
So wouldn't it make more sense to have a utility clerk report to the utility superintendent, or am I looking at that wrong?
Well, at this point, it probably in the future, yes, or the water supervisor, because they work hand in hand
Yeah.
on the billing and that. Mostly that's when we do meet, then, you know, the water supervisor's always involved and what's the next step or, so, yeah, we could change that. I think that was, working in the job description, it's, that they work on workhorse together. It's just the director does the annual review for her, but then usually, you know, then the director would pull in the water supervisor. You know, usually, Jeff sits in the meeting, so. Yeah, that's Carla, right.
Any other discussion on the job descriptions? We don't need any formal action on that at this point, right? Just review and discussion?
We are hoping that these job descriptions do get village board review and discussion, so staff can then go ahead and make final edits to them in the final adopted handbook. So, motion to recommend would be great.
Okay.
I'll make a motion, to pass on the village board approval, of the updated job descriptions, with the corrections that we discussed here at the meeting.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Emmerich, second by Kripke. Any further discussion? All in favor by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4 is review and discussion of Chapter 5 of the Village of Jackson Employee Handbook regarding employee benefits. I'm assuming this is the big packet of stuff we have here. Where
I
would you
can
like
tee
to
it up
go?
if you'd like.
Sure.
Sure. Before you all, in the summary memo, we walk through sections that were updated, changed, or added to our Chapter 5 or Section 5, we use those words interchangeably, in the employee benefits section. While there are sections within here that were not updated, I think that it's important to be available to each of you if you have questions about them. Of particular importance, we modified how we approach cell phones, as they're pretty common to utilize for work purposes in present day. It's not so much a supplemental as more of a common use from day to day, and public records laws don't really play well with that if it's used too heavily on a personal cell phone or work conversations have happened. So that's the impetus of 501. 508 is just clarifying deferred comp. 509 is clarifying vacation pay. 511 is a new inserted section into the policy documentation related to employee assistance program. And 512 is the now finally in policy, but has been implemented for 2, I think, years, Darlene, the employee appreciation or employee recognition program. So I'm open and happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Anyone have any questions for Jen?
Employee assistance, that's in here now, right? I remember reading that, right?
Yes, 5-11, staff did competitively seek proposals for such a program. We saw how, number one, financially competitive Aurora was, but all-inclusive of what their costs represent, that other programs made more à la carte. It was almost a no-brainer. I don't want to overstep my conclusion, but I think each department got a chance to look at both, and we all were hoping that once this is adopted, we'd be able to pursue that program.
And then families that live too right there, if the people are on, employees are on insurance or something, that the families are covered into this, right?
With this policy, any members of the household. Correct. Regardless of if they are participating in the village's health insurance. Okay.
I'm glad to see that, I'm glad to see that recognition policy, I mean, they're pushing it for years to honor people that got the years themselves with that. Glad to see that there.
So for the action on this item, I'm assuming it would just be pushing this forward again to the village board for final review and approval. If we made the recommendation, is there, so this is looking to go, the handbook is looking to be updated in July, August, somewhere in there for final approval. So can we make a recommendation to go ahead with the EAP program immediately so we can start implementing it?
Yeah, we would certainly be open to it. I know that there's contracts to be signed and obviously accounts to be established. We don't foresee that taking an unusually long period of time, so it would be up before what else is effective July 1st as we recommend.
Okay. I will make a motion to forward the changes and updates to chapter 5 of the Village of Jackson Employee Handbook to the village board with the recommendation to move forward with the employee assistance program immediately to implement it as soon as possible. We have a motion by Heckendorf, second by Emmerich. Any further discussion on that item? All in favor by saying aye? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5, citizens or village staff to address the Personnel Committee. Anybody looking to speak? If not, motion by Kripke, second by Emmerich to adjourn. All in favor by saying aye? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.